Welcome to Grab Your Gear. This is Joe. Show today focuses on, well, like everything, the election and the insanity that's going on around us. Joining me today is Jack Windsor, host of the Windsor Report and the managing editor of the Ohio Press Network. Jack, how are you today?
Hey, Joe, I'm super fantastic. Delighted to be here. Thanks for choosing me, man.
Well, thanks for coming on. We're starting to do a little bit of work with you. We enjoy your work. I think you're doing a hell of a job. You,
Thank you.
one of the few people in journalism that has the cojones to actually ask questions. So we like that. I want to talk to you about a press conference that Governor DeWine had recently, where he talked about, yeah, I don't know if he named it by name, but the Citizens Not Politicians group. It's a group that basically is trying to create a panel, for lack of a better word, that would become the arbiters of zoning in the state.
Mhm.
They would basically draw districts and how we'd vote. It's an amendment that will go, it would have to be changed to the Constitution, I believe, the Ohio
Yep.
Constitution. And I listened to your show yesterday when you had Beth, forget her last name. I met her. She's from
State
the Rep.
Representative Beth Lear.
Yeah, from I think up in Delaware, I think up in that area, right? And
Correct.
I listened to it. I'd heard about this because I believe Eric Holder is behind this group, former Attorney General. So it immediately, I divulged to my prior life 10 years ago in DC, and I knew this was a hell of a scam if he was involved. So tell me I'm wrong.
You're not wrong. That's it. Grab your gear. Show's over.
Yeah,
I'm just kidding.
I mean,
No, so citizens, not politicians. I'm going to go in the weeds a little bit. Pull me back out anytime. This is a 501c4 nonprofit. They're an advocacy committee working to amend the Constitution. You're right about that. And what they're trying to do is change how our congressional, the lawmakers we send to DC, and state legislative districts, our state senators, state representatives, how those are drawn. And by the way, the current redistricting commission was put into effect and into power through constitutional amendments in 2015 and 2018, voter approved redistricting reforms. And by the way, those both of those passed by 70% plus. But these folks want to replace that panel. That panel consists of 7 people right now. They're all elected officials. So you have the governor, you have the secretary of state, you have the auditor, you have the speaker's selection and the Senate president selection, the minority leaders selection in the House, and the Senate minority leaders selection in the Senate. So you have 7 people. And by the way, the state maps that commission passed last fall, they passed by bipartisan vote unanimously. But this amendment would take those elected officials and it would replace them with 15 citizens. And those citizens would be chosen by retired judges and get this, a hiring firm. 5 Republicans, 5 Democrats, 5 independents. That's what they tell us. But
so
we'll come
basically
back.
five rhinos, five progressives, and five leftists is what we'll end up with.
It certainly seems that way, and when you look
Yeah,
at what happened in Michigan, we'll talk about that maybe a little
yeah.
later, that's about par for the course. Now, so the amendment will actually this is the funny part, they pitch it as citizens, not politicians, anti-gerrymandering. The amendment on its face will require gerrymandering of
Mhm.
legislative districts by requiring proportional representation in legislation districts, meaning that the partisan numbers in Congress and the General Assembly should mirror statewide voter percentage for Republicans and Democrats. The amendment removes anti gerrymandering restrictions so maps can be gerrymandered to meet proportionality. And in December of 2023, a panel of 3 federal judges in Michigan, Joe, unanimously found the legislative districts drawn in that state up north, as we love to call it, in Ohio,
Yep.
the Independent Citizens Redistricting Commission violated the 14th Amendment rights of African Americans in Michigan. The illegal boundaries generally cracked the majority black city of Detroit into districts that included more wider suburbs, which in turn diminished black voters' ability to elect their candidates of choice. So there's that issue. And then I want to get into the financing at one point too.
but in Michigan, it was interesting because they literally voted out all the black representatives from inner city Detroit, right? I
That's
mean,
right. That's
so
right.
okay, so let's back up a minute. This is a group of people that scream about democracy. So these were democratically elected officials that draw the boundaries now, right? I mean, this is just civics 101, which they don't teach anymore.
No.
But so it's basically elected officials take on a responsibility they have a fiduciary responsibility to the state to do this. So they do it, right? You get the
That's right.
majority, you do it. If you don't believe this goes on in other states, go look at New Jersey's voting map. It is the most incredible puzzle you've ever seen in your life. But literally Google it or DuckDuckGo it or whatever you do to do it. And I watched this, and what it seems to me is just one more thing that is about power. It's about
Yep.
seizing power without being elected. And this is real dangerous right now because we are in a situation where power is being seized by people who have not been elected. And we have a vice president who is going to be running for president. And she really didn't go through a primary. So we've shortened this election cycle with the person who's been appointed. That scares me. Now you look at this. This is the same sort of thing. Get control of the hands of people who've not been elected. I mean, everybody cries, totalitarianism and dictatorships, but Shazam, this is how this stuff starts. You take the power away from people who've been elected. That's where I am on this. You can redistrict anything you want, but
Yep.
it's the method of seizing power that's got me concerned.
Well, that has me uber concerned, and then I'll tell you another sidecar add-on to this proposed amendment that is truly concerning, given what you just said. And I want to reiterate: so this commission isn't elected by you. That means you can't get rid of them.
Right.
That means that you don't have power. And again, you hit it, hammer on the nail head. This is brought forward by people who cry about saving our democracy. Well, the last I checked, you want to be able to elect people that are doing it right and not elect people. And the power of the ballot box is central in our representative constitutional republic. This takes that away. And here's the sidecar. You ready? So, also written into the amendment would be the permission of this group to spend as much money as they want in court. So they get in power. If you don't like it and you want to take it, the legal route, which is oftentimes what you have to do, right? It's something, there has to be a violation. You take it before the court, and then the court gets to adjudicate. Well, here they're going to use your money to fight against you, and they're not going to give you a vote or a say on the matter.
Here's the problem, too. They have the media in their pocket. And I'm talking about just the corporate media that is going to do nothing but do stories about how this creates equality and equity in representation of the voter and the displaced and the disenfranchised and every other adjective you want to use. It's going to be shoved in our ears and up down our
Mhm.
throats from now till then. And I worked in news and we were horrible then when I was there. It is god awful now because they are run by Google and leftists. And I'm talking your local news. I think even the weather people have been compromised. So, I mean, I say that facetiously, but your news outlets' information are not news and information anymore. That's why we brought you on, and why we've tried to do work with you now is because,
Thank
and you actually have like I said, the cojones to ask a question. How many times you go into a press conference where you're standing by people who feel like they're executing a plan more than seeking truth or seeking answers? Seriously.
For me, if that doesn't happen, it's a good day to have a good day. I mean, that is really the standard operating procedure, the way that I see it. And I used to think this, and this is going down a path, but I want to mention this. It doesn't really relate to this amendment, but tangentially it does. I used to think, Joe, that journalists and reporters and talking heads were maybe bought off, right? They were just, you pay them enough money and they'll say what you want them to say. But what I'm starting to say is something you hit on earlier, is we don't teach civics anymore. And
No.
and because we don't get taught the foundational truths, and because the press doesn't give us the facts, it's kind of this perpetuating cycle. And I really truly believe now that there are people who, when they're writing stories, they believe that they're defending our democracy. They believe that this is a good idea. They believe that citizens, not politicians, is a great solution to what they call gerrymandered maps. Well, the reality is Democrats haven't done anything attractive to be elected. That's the issue. And to your point about the press, one of the things that's really critical, not only about this amendment, but other amendments down the road, I wrote about this a lot last year. Um, some people listening may remember there were two ballot initiatives last fall. They were both issue one. One of them would have required, if it had passed, for a 60% affirmative vote to amend our Constitution. We don't have that anymore. That means that 50% plus one vote amends our Constitution, our foundational document, which means that takes precedent. If a law is written and it goes against the Constitution, Constitution wins. And so, all of that to say this. This is one of those amendments, to your point about the press. The press is going to write about this like this is a great idea. As of yesterday, Citizens Not Politicians has received $23 million in funding. So the money truck has backed into the state. They've dumped the money, and now the messaging is going to go out over the airwaves. I'll give you, I think on April 30th, 2024, the Citizens Not Politicians Committee reserved $10,583,000 in television broadcast ads in Cleveland, Cincinnati, and Columbus from September 17th to November 5th. So, and you go, well, okay, who's backing it up? Well, the 1630
I'll
fund.
guess. I'll
Yeah, you
guess.
guess. You guess.
George Soros. It always gets
1630
back to him.
1630 fund. The 1630 fund is part of that Arabella Advisors Group, Movement Voter Project, Article 4, ACLU. Here's where it gets interesting. American Federation of Teachers, 500,000. Ohio Education Association, 500,000. Ohio Progressive Collaboration, 500,000. Democracy Fund Voice, what a joke and a misnomer, 200,000. So this thing is funded by the same people who
Ideologically
funded
captured groups.
100%.
They're just all ideologically you see teachers unions, a
Yep.
leftist organization. You know, the problem, go back to the media, they're gonna pepper this thing too, because reporters basically are nothing more than sorority girls who want to be famous and guys who got beat up in parking lots in high school. That's reporters now, is what we're left with, that just want to be on TV. And so they aren't going to challenge any of this stuff. They're going to get press releases from these organizations of why it's good, and they're going to hope a cattle call shows up at the election, and people, they try to ram it in like one of those things like judges where they just try to get name recognition. They're going to
Yeah.
try to brand this so you fall asleep, and they'll think, well, yeah, that's good, that's citizens, not politicians. I hate politicians, so I'm voting for it, and then we're screwed. We're
Yeah,
screwed.
that's we are. First of all, we will be, because what will happen here is what happened in Michigan, what happened in Colorado. The maps will be colored blue, and then all of a sudden, what they can't do right now, Joe. They being the progressives, they can't get meaningful laws passed through the General Assembly
Correct.
because their ideas are not electable. So what they're
Correct.
doing is they're putting these changes into the Constitution that are radical. And oh, by the way, we're going to go ahead and gerrymander the districts so that we can actually get in power now in the state house, in the governor's chair, in DC, more from the state of Ohio. And then they're going to have the permanency on these progressive policy pushes, if that makes sense.
Okay, so since you and I talked, well, one last thing too, the
Yep.
marketing and branding that we just talked about, they're going to market and brand this like a dishwashing soap. Um, Marketing and branding is going on with the Kamala Harris campaign. When you see things like white women for Kamala, white dudes for Kamala, okay, here's a signal. This is all a race. This is to avoid any discussion of literally the border, the number one issue for a lot of people.
Mhm.
So this is going to be all about white guilt and race from
Yes,
now to November. And
that's
then
right.
since you and I talked about doing this podcast, I got a call from a former aide of Ted Cruz. I had met him 10 years ago. He works for America First Legal Foundation, but then he took
Okay.
a leave of absence to work for the RNC. And that was a wonderful phone call because he called me because we do some work with a group called the Public Interest Legal Foundation occasionally, and they investigate voter fraud. They're lawyers.
Yep.
He called because he said, hey, might need some help. We are tracking in Pennsylvania, Georgia, Michigan, Wisconsin, Nevada, and Arizona of a flood of registration of illegal immigrants. They're being recruited, registered to vote, And he says, right now we are preparing legal briefs because we know we're going to have to sue because what's going to happen. And you can write this down. And if I'm wrong on election night, Jack, I'll take you to any steakhouse in any city in America to pay you off. But this is where they want to collect the absentee ballot blitz that comes in on election night once they figure out how many they need. And if they feel they can overwhelm the ballot box, they get that you can overwhelm it so much, you
Mhm.
win in court, and you'll be totally hit over the head by the sorority girls who want to be famous, and the guys who got beat up in high school will be parroting disenfranchised voters, and nobody will say the word illegal, but it will be. They are concerned that there is such a push to register them that that wave not only came across the border, but is about to hit the ballot box. That shock you by any chance? You heard that?
Yeah, so, I try to keep my, pulse. I keep a pulse on several significant issues as it relates to policy and politics, and that's in my purview right now, and it's a concern. In fact, I've spent some time in the past couple of weeks talking with lawmakers and statewide elected officials in Ohio about Ohio's system. And let me just give you a glimpse. When you think about voting, there are so many layers. It's voter registration, and once you're registered and you're on the voter roll, then you vote, and then you have voting systems, right? And so all of that you want to make sure is working in concert and in harmony with all the other pieces. And so one of the things that is concerning, because in fact I talked with the Secretary of State's office here in Ohio recently, and they said something that is true. We don't know how many non-citizens are in the United States. We don't know that. And in Ohio, not long ago, I think it was Yellow Springs, the community there was politicking for non-citizens to be able to vote. Now, the Secretary of State put the kibosh on that, thankfully, but make no mistake about it, there is one political party that is completely happy giving non-citizens free health
Yes.
care through Medicare, and they really do want
Yes.
them on the voter rolls. And so there are so many things at play here that even if you have, let's say in Ohio, you have voter registration laws, um, there are ways around those laws. That if you're using absentee ballots and you're
Yes.
filling out voter registration forms in ways that are not unintentionally false but nefariously false, and you're
Yes.
using mail-in ballots and absentee ballots, Houston, we've got a problem.
Mhm.
That is causing me significant heartburn as I think about the number of people who are here. And by the way, I'll tease this. We can't talk about it much today, but we'll talk about it maybe in another podcast if I'm blessed enough to have you invite me back. But um, I wrote about or talked about Black Fork Strategies, which is a group in Ohio that has canvassers that were out registering voters. Well, they're under investigation right now because they put, I'll give you a name, Henry Kissinger. That name sound familiar to you?
Yes.
He was on the voting roll, the voting system in Hamilton County, Ohio. And so
Not
this is
only
going on in
does he
Ohio.
not live in Ohio, he's dead. I mean,
He's
so
dead.
not only is not even I don't even know if he ever came to Ohio. So
Right.
what a patriot.
So that whole point is, you have groups of people, and I've got to be careful here legally. I can't say that they're nefarious and they're doing it wrong, but somebody was doing it wrong, whether it's the canvasser or the company. And so, when you think about that nefarious intent and you think about the number of illegal people that are here, that to me is risk mitigation 101. There is a tremendous amount of risk that people who are not fully qualified electors might be pulling the levers, filling in the circles, and punching the buttons in November.
Do you know there's last I saw 54,000 immigrants in Springfield, Ohio.
Housing
That
shortage there. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
54,000. Do you know 54,000 people could potentially change an election in the state of Ohio?
100%. I mean, I think somewhere along that line, I can't remember what battleground state it was in 2020. When you really get it down to, I think it was something like 30,000. That could absolutely change an election.
Yeah,
Um,
Pennsylvania. It always comes down to Pittsburgh and Philly. I mean, Philadelphia notorious for having, you know, all kinds of people standing with clubs in front of voting precincts. I mean, it's insane what we're facing right now. But it's also interesting because we talked about this amendment that's going to be posted in the state of Ohio. Do you
Yep.
know what they're calling it yet? Like what issue it's going to be?
Great question. I can
We'll have
look
to
it up real
find
quick.
out. But
Yeah,
no, we'll have to find out and get it out because this network is designed for people who get up and go to work every day and don't have time to be harassed by cable news and things. So we have to get them information they need, and this is something they need. And they have to get up. They have to
yeah,
go voting that day. Uh, this is the sort of thing where you lose your freedoms over. And I'm not being hyperbolic when I say that. You lose your local freedoms doing this stuff when you allow it to happen.
100%. And you know what? I'm actually looking it up right now because it's important. Amendment 2024, and I'm hopeful that this search inquiry gives me the right search return page here, and it does not. I will get
Doesn't
you
it
a
doesn't it
name.
scare you not scare you or bother you a little bit when the Secretary of State says something like, "We don't even know how many illegals are I mean, so you don't even know how many they could potentially be registering because they are
That's
registering
right.
them."
Oh, they are registering them. There are journalists all over this across the country who are trying to write about this, trying to highlight the fact that what you have are you have these. They appear to be grassroots organizations. I call them AstroTurf organizations. They're
Yeah.
funded by the same actors that are
Yes.
funding this
Yeah.
Citizens Not Politicians group. And what they do is they just dump a bunch of money in, and then they go hire people, and they recruit, they go out and try to get ballots out to people, they make sure people are voting. Now listen, I got to be careful though, because I think there are people. I do believe Frank LaRose is working hard to make sure that Ohio has free and fair elections and that things are done the right way. But when you think about risk in any way, and I'm going to try to put this in the language of people who grab their gear, right? Like when you're doing a
Yeah.
job, there's a standard operating procedure you follow, and for people like me, it's measure twice, cut once, right? And it gets more complex the more complex the job. And so when you have all of these things, like people who are undocumented, when you have little gaps that could threaten voter integrity, you can have the best intentions, but that doesn't mean that things are going to get done the right way.
Well, no matter what happens, we're going to be in for a crap show this November because unfortunately it's all going to be headed to the courts. But if we are aware now, and if citizens are aware and they see this going on, they see registrations, they report that stuff. And who do you report
That's
it
right.
to? You call Jack. You call the Secretary of State's office. You call tinfoil Ted. I don't care. You get the information out because I think everybody's going to have to be a voter policeman now because it's that these people are nuts. And I'm not talking about the Democratic Party. I'm talking about the progressive, out of their minds leftist.
Yeah.
It's a,
The
it's a.
activists. Yep.
I, I wish they were just activists. I think they're literally trying to change and transform the country in this next election. And there's a lot going on, and I hate to be the guy that keeps yelling from the housetops and that, but it bothers me because we were going to do this thing on the amendment that's going to come up. And then you get a phone call. Look, and when I get a phone call, Jack, from somebody like that, that means I'm the last guy on the call. I'm the last person they call. I'm the least important person on there. So if I'm getting a call on it, that must mean it's really bad. That's a real concern. And I don't say that just to knock myself. Literally, there's 1,000 people before you call me, and obviously it's a concern. And there's
Oh,
a
it's a
group you know
huge.
about. I mean,
It's
what was the group you called? You said that's under investigation,
well, I think I can tell
or
you
just
that the Hamilton County Board of Elections, they looked into, and one of their board members there called it a fraudulent registration effort. I do believe that they're being investigated. We'll know, I think, in the next couple of days. It's called Black
okay.
Fork Strategies. Um, but the people got to do their due diligence. I think if you remember Acorn, if I remember correctly, was a group that was doing some similar stuff, and they were doing
Oh
it
yeah,
wrong intentionally from the corporate level. I think what people are trying to do here is figure out, is the corporation doing this wrong, or were just some bad actors that were out canvassing? And maybe it's just something as simple as the pay scale. You get $1 a name or $2 a name. Oh,
yes,
okay. Well, then I'm going to write down George Soros. I'm going to write down
yeah,
Henry Kissinger, and I'm going to turn it in.
yeah.
So we got to that stuff has to be vetted before we throw them into the fire. But it certainly stinks to high heaven.
Jack Windsor Report. We appreciate you coming on. You are with the Ohio Press Network, a company you founded. You're the managing editor of it. We appreciate you taking time to come on, grab your gear. We are just working on a couple projects together, trying to help each other get some information out, information that our audience needs. And Jack, we're going to be talking a lot. So buckle up, buddy. It's coming.
What do they say? Buckle up, Buttercup. Hey,
Yeah.
I'm here for the ride, man. It's an honor to be here. Thank you.
Okay, we'll talk to you soon. That's Jack Windsor, and I am Joe Weasel with Grab Your Gear. Thanks for taking time to check in with us today. We'll be back next week with another show. In the meantime, be safe out there. Be aware. Everything we're talking about is stuff we know, information you need to know. So we appreciate you taking time to listen in. If you have a question or comment, feel free to reach out to us. Our director of information is Dick. You can get him at dick@grabyourgear.net. I am Joe at grabyourgear.net. And apprentice Isabella is Isabella at grabyourgear.net. Feel free to shoot us any information, call, leads, things you need us to know. In the meantime, have a great weekend, everybody. We'll see you next week back here on Grab Your Gear.